The NFL announced their 2025 salary cap projections, and it is good news for the Bengals. It's also really good news if you're a Bengals fan that wants them to pay Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson. I'll explain why right now on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Hi again, everyone, and welcome into CBT. I'm James Rapien of BengalsTalk.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, join the 53,000 plus Bengals fans that subscribe on YouTube, and make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcast, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Apple, and whether that's Amazon. Leave us a 5-star review. If you're one of those 53,000 subscribers, please support us on audio as well. It makes it easy for you to take us with you on the go. You can listen in your car, listen on flights if you're traveling, anything like that. Today's video is brought to you by BetUS. Also, real quick, shout out to my guy Ted Karras and the Cincy Hat team. Look at them. Hooking me up with a couple of hats. It's a big off season. You can get yours at thecincyhat.com, and they do great work. And let's dive in, because this isn't about Ted Karras. This isn't about the Bengals and their ability to keep their veteran center. It's about their ability to keep their stars, their top dogs, the players that everybody wants them to keep, at least those Bengals fans watching, and everyone across the league wants them to lose. Teams across the NFL want the Bengals to lose T. Higgins for obvious reasons. Well, we got good news from a salary cap standpoint, and I think this is good for players. I think this is good for teams, and I certainly think this is good for the Cincinnati Bengals. The NFL informed teams on Tuesday that the salary cap for the 2025 season will be somewhere between $277.5 million and $281.5 million. That's huge. That's big news for the Cincinnati Bengals, because it's an extra, I would say, 6 to 8, possibly $10 million of cap space that they will have, that every NFL team will have. And if you're the Bengals, well, you plan on franchise tagging T. Higgins. That's something that I reported earlier this week at BengalsTalk.com. Hopefully you got the news there, and it's why you should subscribe, because when we have news, we're going to have it for you right here on CBT. But they plan on tagging T. Higgins. If T. Higgins doesn't get to the free agent market, well, then Jamar, Trey, and T all under contract with the Bengals, all in a situation where the Bengals want to re-sign them. And if they're not hitting the market, then having extra wiggle room makes a ton of sense for the Cincinnati Bengals. Coming up, I'm going to explain why it's likely that they can not only afford these guys, but build around them and add to their championship core in free agency, even after signing these 3 to long-term extensions. But this is huge. This is a huge development, because knowing where you're going to be at, somewhere between that $277.5 million and $181.5 million in cap room, now you have a really good idea of how you can negotiate with these guys. You're not blindly negotiating based on projections of the salary cap. And I looked, once this came out, and Dan Graziano of ESPN was the first one to have this. Once this came out, I was like, well, what were teams hoping the cap would be, and kind of projecting things? And it was somewhere in that 265 to 275 range. Well, the Bengals probably went conservative, knowing them, at 265. Well, now we know it will be around 277.5, anywhere from there to 281.5. And so the Bengals, let's say it's somewhere in the middle of that, they'll have around $51 million in cap space. And that will obviously go up if they move on from Sheldon Rankins, and more so when they move on from Sheldon Rankins, when they move on from Jermaine Pratt, when they, I would say, cut Sam Hubbard. Maybe they bring him back. I think Sam Hubbard's still a useful player, but not at that number that he's due. So you can save a ton of cap space just with those 3 guys. I think there's some other cap casualties as well. And that's why the Bengals can absolutely not only afford the big 3, they're paying Joe Burrow. They can afford the big 3, and the big 3 is Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson. They also have Orlando Brown Jr. in a contract. Those are your 5 best players. And so those 5 guys can all be paid, can all be on extensions. Orlando Brown Jr. has 2 years left. Those other guys, not named Joe Burrow, are technically in their final year of their deal. Once the tag gets placed on T. Higgins, that salary cap number will drop as well. He'll be at $26.18 million if they do tag him. They have until March 4th to do so. Maybe they get a long-term extension done before that, which would be ideal. But how do they keep T, Trey, and Jamar? I'll explain why it isn't just possible. It should be likely. We'll get into that coming up next. Today's video is brought to you by BetUS. Get in on the action today by going to betus.com. Using code YouTube150, you'll get a 150% bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000. That's right. Go to betus.com, use code YouTube150, and you can get on all the action from the NBA to Cincinnati Reds futures in Major League Baseball to Cincinnati Bengals futures. Maybe you think the Bengals are going to handle business in free agency and have a great draft and be one of those Super Bowl contenders. They have all those odds for you at betus.com. And they also have a full casino at betus.com. So go there now, use code YouTube150 and get a 150% bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000. How did the Bengals keep T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson long-term? Well, my buddy Jake Lisco of Locked On Bengals has been all over this. Make sure you check out Locked On Bengals, by the way. But wherever you get your podcast, right here on YouTube as well. The Bengals can absolutely do so. And this is how, and he laid it out on Twitter. And with a $40 million per year, 4-year extension for Jamar Chase, a $30 million 3-year contract extension for T. Higgins, and a 2-year contract extension for Trey Hendrickson, $30 million per year. So there you go, $30 million, $30 million, $40 million. The APY on those is probably right about where they'll be. Maybe it's a little high, which I like that he put it that way. By the way, if T. Higgins signs a 4-year extension versus a 3, you can spread out that cap hit even farther. But if the Bengals make the obvious cuts, the veterans that should be gone, they'll have, after doing all of those things and accounting for the rookie pool, which is roughly around $9 million or so, they'll have over $70 million in cap space. This Bengals team can structure this, and the way Jake did it, he structured these contracts the way the Bengals do. And so there's really no dilemma here. It's not like he pushed a bunch of money or deferred years or did anything like that. There's no void years in these deals. And so the Bengals can do this realistically and do it in a way where they have money to spend at guard, where they have money to spend at edge, spend at defensive tackle. Maybe they go get a corner, they get a free safety. They can do those things. They can. And it's a matter of if they will. And that's what I really want to hammer home. It's not can, it's will. And my thought with this, because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you're so confident in the Bengals front office, James, because what I say is I expect them to do it. My expectations are there. Well, you shouldn't have those expectations. Look at their history. I don't care about their history. I think it's irrelevant. And people are going to argue otherwise. Here's why it's irrelevant. The Bengals championship window is now. I was on Sirius XM NFL radio earlier today with Rich Gannon, and he asked me that. And I'm like, yeah, their championship window's now. I mean, you're talking to someone. Look at the book over my shoulder. I wrote Enter the Jungle. Every season of Bengals history, reviewed every single one. This is the window. This is that championship window that you dream of if you're a franchise. So why wouldn't you get these deals done? Why wouldn't you go all in on winning? And even if they don't go all in the same way the Eagles do, where they're deferring money and void years and pushing things into the future, Jake didn't do any of that here. And he found a way to get these 3 deals done and still have plenty of cap space to address guard and defensive tackle and linebacker and all of these weaknesses that everyone's worried about. You can do it. Will they do it? That is the question. Can they? Absolutely, they can. And my expectation is that they will. I expect them to do it. You know why? Because I do think that the Bengals front office knows this. I do think that deep down they know, man, we have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson. And not only can we keep these guys, not only do we steal Orlando Brown Jr. from the Kansas City Chiefs, and we have Amarius Mims, who would be a top 10 pick in a lot of drafts. We have these pieces, but we have the resources to not only keep these guys happy, these veterans, these proven guys like Chase, Hendrickson, and Higgins, but also add more proven veterans in free agency. They can do that. And that's where my expectation is, because that's what championship teams do. And they, at Paycor Stadium, should be expecting to contend for championships year in and year out with this core. You keep the core together, you build around it. It makes so much sense. I was on, and I'm not trying to plug every radio station I've been on over the past 24 hours, but I was on with Rocky Boyman on 700 WLW. Rocky played with Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Dwight Freeney. And I was like, this is exactly like 05 Peyton Manning, 06 Peyton Manning, Rocky, where you have these guys You want to pay him. You want to keep your Dwight Freeney. You want to keep your Reggie Wayne. You want to keep your Marvin Harrison. Of course you do. The Bengals absolutely should do that. And the beauty of it is, with the cap rising, they can do it. They can get these guys done, keep them happy, and then also have plenty of cap space to handle business and free agency and add pieces around them. Great news for the Bengals with the salary cap being higher than projected. They have to take advantage of it. No excuses. The expectation is the expectation. The standard is the standard, Bengals fans. It's time to hold them to that standard this offseason. For more, make sure you check out BengalsTalk.com. Today's video brought to you by BetUS. Shout out to Andrew Fox Miller as well. If you missed Enter the Jungle this week, if you missed a ton of thoughts, over 20 minutes on T. Higgins, make sure you check out those videos as well. And until next time, thank you so much for listening on Apple, on Spotify, on wherever. I almost said applesauce, which sounds kind of yummy. And until next time, for Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for listening and watching to Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Do you buy or sell the idea that Joe Burrow realistically could ask for a trade at some point in the future?
There's some Palmer era trauma creeping back up, and I sympathize with that. But don't forget how many people said Burrow wouldn't even accept being drafted by the Bengals in 2020. You want to be on that side of things this time? Be my guest. I'm not buying that at all. If that were to ever happen, there are very serious problems with this front office, with this organization.